Samantha Montanaro, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Tokeativity. And this session today is on treating PTSD and other illness using psilocybin. I'm so excited to be here today at the Tokeativity Plant Medicine and Psychedelic Social. It's such an exciting time to be alive and to be participating in these big shifts that are happening, not only inside of each one of us, but also collectively. I want to start by saying, disclaimer, I am not a doctor. Also, disclaimer, some of the substances that we're talking about today are not legal in different spaces. I am coming to you from Oregon, where it is psilocybin specifically is decriminalized. And I just wanted to kind of give this disclaimer of, in general, I'm not making any recommendations for you. I'm going to share some things for me and things that I've heard and learned over my years of being interested in and using plant medicine and psychedelics. I encourage each one of you to be incredibly safe, to follow your heart and your intuition, and to also do your research before utilizing psychedelics for treating, any symptoms of illness that you may be experiencing. So a little bit about me. I used psilocybin for the first time, I think when I was 17, and it was definitely in a recreational type setting, like so many of us experienced. I was young and people were like, if you eat these mushrooms, they distort reality and they make you really giggly. And, I was just using them out of having fun. And I feel like that was actually kind of similar for me as well with cannabis. When I moved to Oregon in 2014, I moved here mostly because we wanted to leave the Midwest, but I was dealing with a plethora of issues for me as a mom and as a woman who I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis in my neck when I was 19 years old. I have scoliosis. I had recurrent miscarriage at this point and dealt with just a lot of physical pain. And this is when something kind of clicked for me that plant medicine is really healing and beneficial in helping me not only feel better, but awakening to what I need to do to actually avoid illness altogether. In 2019, after being in a difficult marriage for a number of years at that point and being under way too much stress, I ended up having a neck injury that resulted in a small stroke, in a TIA, which is essentially a cutoff of oxygen to the brain for a short amount of time that causes temporary damage. This was incredibly shocking for me as a business owner, a mom, and someone who is highly active, having a brain injury out of nowhere, seemingly, and then going into the recovery process. It was just a really interesting experience for me. And today I'm going to share some things about my story in treating myself. It's been 2.5 years, and I can happily say today that I am feeling remarkably better and have deepened my relationship with psilocybin in treating not only the physical repercussions of having a brain injury, but also my own PTSD from this experience. Today, I wanted to take a moment before going any farther. I was going to be doing this talk with a special guest, and she decided to not join today because she was not feeling safe as a woman of color, sharing her experiences with psilocybin because of the current state of things. And, as I start to tell my story, I just want to acknowledge that I'm coming from a really privileged place to not feel afraid, not feel fear of, losing my home or my safety or any of that with sharing my psilocybin stories. And I'm sending so much love to the woman who is going to join us. And again, this is just still a highly controversial topic, which is why it's so important for us to be sharing. And at the same time, we should always be following our intuition and doing what we feel is best. So I wanted to acknowledge that I'm definitely coming from a privileged place. So I'm going to share a little bit about my wellness journey that includes psilocybin and also includes some other things. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tie between emotional and physical wellness. I'm going to share a little bit of information about mushrooms and actually show a few different kinds. And we'll cover some ways to consume. And I'm also going to go over how to figure out if you're a good candidate for trying psychedelics for treating illness and how to have a good experience. So my wellness journey. As I was sharing with you, I had a brain injury and was at this point dealing with trauma of a few different levels, big T and little t trauma. And actually dealing with physical repercussions from having a lack of oxygen to my brain. So what did my wellness journey look like? When we're talking about treating illness in general, which is, what is illness defined as? I'm not going to pull up the Google of it right now, but it's like, when I think about illness, I think about a lot of different things. I think about cancer. I think about, kind of the standard like heart disease and stroke, arthritis, right? Like, things that people are dealing with, diabetes, that make them not feel well. But like illness can also stem from emotional trauma and overall just not feeling well and connected in our body vehicle that we're in on this plane right now. So my wellness journey started with really looking at consumption. And obviously, I'll get to this. I implemented psilocybin and I'll share more about how and what worked for me there. But I really started to look at consumption in general. In my research of healing a brain injury and healing in general, food is really like the first thing that comes up. So when we're talking about healing with psilocybin, I'm sorry to break it to you, but if you're eating highly processed, dense, dead foods, chances are no matter how much psilocybin you consume, you're still not going to be healed. We really have to look at what we're putting into our body and how that's interacting with, all of the things in our lifestyle. So I started consuming food that is alive and raw. I find I feel like my best when I'm avoiding processed gluten type things, as well as a lot of processed dairy. Some lighter natural cheeses, soft cheeses can be easier to digest, but avoiding fried foods, vegetable oils, and gluten and dairy are really the big ones. Eating food, when we think about our human selves as foragers, eating, lots of greens and veggies and fruits and also meat. It's been actually remarkably life-changing for me to just not be on some diet, but for me to really sit with and think about, what am I consuming and why? Is this fuel, or am I consuming because I want to feel better? Because often I think we find when we have illness, we're just in this like desperate place to feel better. And we're like grabbing to anything that makes us feel good. And yeah, Tiffany, anti-inflammatory enriched foods, that's what's up. I definitely found it to be life-changing to, like I said, to adopt this diet, but to also really start getting to the root of why I'm even consuming things. This also goes beyond food and beverage. This is music. This is stimulation. This is friendships. This is, what am I consuming? What am I allowing to enter into my energy field at all? It's really interesting when we start thinking about consumption, not just as food or drugs or alcohol, but consumption of energy and other energies and other people and media and digital media and all of this stuff that we're doing. It's really, really important. So if you're wanting to treat yourself, I highly recommend starting to look at what you're consuming and not just from a food perspective. Movement and mindfulness has been an absolute life changer for me. And if you're going to use psilocybin and other plant medicines to, to provide relief from symptoms you're experiencing, you're going to find this combination of what you're consuming in combination with movement and mindfulness, being aware that you're doing these things. This is what changes you. It's so beautiful. And this is the type of thing, once you open the door, you can't go back. Once you see, oh, they were just marketing this garbage to me and it actually is horrible for me. And when I actually just listen to my body and ask my body what it wants and then listen to it and deliver to it, I actually start to feel a lot better in a way that no one can even change. Let's talk a little bit about the tie between emotional and physical wellness. And I can only speak from experience here. I am a highly emotional, intuitive person, and I have found the more that I've brought my awareness to it, I mean, I straight up experience inflammation and pain way more when I am dealing with difficult emotions. I've really found it to be incredibly interesting at like how the patriarchy has really like stripped us of our connection to feeling and our connection to our emotions. And this is why psilocybin works. This is why that even works, because it connects you to yourself and it helps you awaken to your feeling space and also your thought space and how these things connect, the mind-body connection. When we look at emotional wellness, there's been a lot of research dropping lately about gut health and about how our gut biome actually determines the wellness that we're experiencing in our heads and in our emotional body as well. So these two things are tied together. This is why treating PTSD, it's, you can't just take a pill. You really have to get to the root of that emotional imprint of that traumatic experience, and doing that with graciousness and with the help of plants and with the help of movement and music and community, one can heal from literally anything. It is incredibly powerful. So let's get into mushrooms. There are over 200 kinds of psychedelic mushrooms. One thing that we have talked about a lot in this event today already is like, hopefully long gone are the days. I mean, we're just embarking upon them, where it's like, hey man, I got this jar of shrooms, cool. Like, I don't know, just eat some. It's like, what kind of mushroom? There's over 200 different kinds. What kind is it? What is the potency? What are the nuances? We're experiencing this with cannabis. It's so beautiful to be able to go to a store and pick and choose your experience. It's really so amazing to do that. We're all in the beginning of our journey with cannabis there. So I really look forward to the days where mushrooms can hopefully be in this space as well, and other types of psychedelics. I wanted to show a few different kinds that I have on hand here. Again, I'm in Oregon, so it is legal for me to have psychedelic mushrooms. This is an Ecuadorian. It's a type of cubensis. And this is a large amount. I mean, if I ate this whole mushroom, I would probably have a 6 to 8 hour experience. Aaron, come over. I'll bring my jar. As far as what kinds to start out with, really, honestly, you can start with any kind. This is another type of cubensis. You can see it actually looks kind of similar, but they are different. These are two different varieties of cubensis. So as we see, it's kind of similar to like, how there are certain families of cannabis plants that are like similar expressions, and then there are other families that are like other types of expressions. This is kind of the same family. This is a cyanescens, and these grow all over Oregon. They're called wavy caps. You can actually find them on college campuses a lot of times, or growing in wood chips. And this dose is actually probably similar to this cubensis. So this is typically about 4 times as strong as this type of mushroom. So I hear someone say that I heard penis envy is really potent. Penis envy can be really potent. It depends on the grower and which cycle it was picked at. And here's the thing, we're like just in the beginning of this, right? So how does one source mushrooms? Let's talk about that a little bit. So you want to get your hands on some mushrooms. First tip is don't call me. I can't help you. But what I can do is help connect you with how to be growing your own mushrooms. But I'll talk about resources in a minute here and growing your own. So sourcing mushrooms, first and foremost, ask a friend. And, a lot of people are starting to talk about it. Think about your friends. Like, we got to go old school here. We all know, how did you buy weed back in the day? How have you gotten them in the past? And if you can, find out as much information about the variety as possible. If you cannot find out information about what kind it is, and it's just a bag of shrooms, I highly recommend getting a scale. You should always be measuring out the weight of how much you're eating. This mushroom can have actually less psilocybin in it than this mushroom, can have less psilocybin in it than this mushroom. Again, I was just saying, you could eat these and this one's going to pack more of a punch than this one. So, it's kind of challenging. You need to know the strain, and then you need to know the weight there. But once, typically standard shrooms are cubensis. And a good starting place is even going with like 0.1 grams, not 1 gram. 1 gram for me is a full freaking dose. 0.1 grams, a tenth of a gram. I think that that's a great place to start. And that is technically a microdose, and you can always go up from there. So sourcing mushrooms, if you find a friend who sells you some mushrooms, start really low. You can always have more. And once you get to know it a little bit, it's going to, I think you're going to start to be able to feel empowered in your journey of healing through using this tool. Let's talk a little bit about growing mushrooms. So it is legal to buy spores online. You can buy spores. You can get information from Double Blind, y'all. Write down Double Blind. They're sponsoring this event. On all the event things, you can find links. If you don't know Double Blind, they actually have a growing your own psilocybin course. They have lots of juicy information about microdosing, about different varieties. They have like really incredible cutting edge content. They're coming out with a lot of stuff all the time too. So it's one of my favorite resources. Also, Eurowid. You remember that? Like, I remember going on Eurowid in like 2001 and being like, can they track me and see that I'm looking up drugs right now? But I wanted information. I wanted to be using drugs in a mindful way. I'm excited about drugs. I love all drugs. I don't know about you, but every drug I've ever done has been a really different experience. And I've learned so much about myself every time. And I want to use in an empowered way. I want to know what I'm taking. And, it's really cool. So Eurowid is freaking cool. It's like pretty old school looking, but they have a lot of great information and forums. So really check that out. Eurowid is definitely a blast from the past. Check out about growing your own mushrooms. It can be a fun journey of like starting your own little lab in your kitchen and like growing them in a little bin. But let me tell you, it's really, really fun. And there's nothing better than growing your own. I think that when you're looking at healing yourself, I think always sourcing those, having that connection with this intelligent life form that you're going to engage with, you're going to have the best experience if you're going through this. So I highly recommend looking into growing. And again, Double Blind and Eurowid, you can find some resources there. Thanks for all the comments, everybody. I'm loving this. So let's keep going here. We got a lot more to cover, and I only have about 20 minutes, and I would love to leave time for people to come up and join me on stage here to share some things. So let's get into ways to consume. So first of all, macro versus micro. So a macro dose is typically described as a large amount of psychedelics, of mushrooms, or of any substance really, that is going to be really altering. So I've done a lot of research on this, and it's funny what I see, what is described as a macro dose. Some people say 3.5 grams or more is a macro dose. For me, with a highly sensitive system, and I'm recovering from a brain injury, right? If you're treating yourself with like PTSD, I'm doing a 10-hour, like I'm on a different dimension, might not be like the best thing. A macrodose can be trauma inducing itself. So I just want to say that, like, although I'm a total advocate for macrodosing, I think it's really important. And I think there's a time and place for that. I just want to share that what's described as a macrodose, I think is really, it's like a personal experience. Again, with cannabis, let's compare it to that. A 10 milligram edible for my mom is like, she's on another planet for like, hours and hours and does not feel well. Whereas for me, 10 milligrams doesn't even make my body really feel anything other than a little bit more relief. So I think we're experiencing a similar thing with psychedelics. So get to know, like I said, your product. So you have some product, go low, go slow, get to know what is a microdose for you and what is a macrodose. A microdose, I talked a little bit about capsules in a session earlier. This is my favorite way to consume mushrooms. I make capsules myself for my treatment. And this is how I do it. I grow mushrooms. I'll grow my own, right? Or I'll buy them from a friend and I will weigh them out. And a capsule this size can hold 0.2 grams of powder. And what I actually do is put this in a coffee grinder. I measure what the weight is. So I usually start with 7 grams and I'll do 7 grams of this. And then I actually mix with other neuroregenerative mushrooms and immunoboosting mushrooms because I am treating a brain injury, and lion's mane, chaga, reishi, cordyceps, all of these other types of mushrooms that are non-psychoactive are really great for neuroregenesis and immunity. So I actually do 7 grams of that, and then I'll put in, I think I do 3 grams of a few other kinds, and I make a mixture of powder. And you can just buy a capsule making machine online. They're really easy to use. And I fill these up. And what ends up happening for me with my formulation is it ends up being about 0.1 per capsule. And for me, the experience is kind of like having a cocktail almost. It's like I feel slightly different, but I'm not impaired by any means. And I think if you're impaired, that's technically not a microdose. So a microdose is something that should enhance your existence, but not take over your experience. I really highly recommend the capsule thing because you know what the beautiful thing is, folks, is like I said, so say I make, okay, I'm not going to do the math here, but say I make a total of 20 grams of powdered material and I break them down into 0.2, then I've got how many capsules, right? Again, not going to do the math in the moment for the fear of messing up the number, but that should be a pretty simple equation. One should end up with a whole bunch of capsules that have the same thing in them. So I really recommend this if you're treating illness, because anybody that knows anything about medicine is, if you can't kind of quantify it or like create some sort of consistency, unfortunately, I feel like your experience is not going to be consistent either. Yeah, I mean, I guess a little bit more on that. So different ways to consume mushrooms, kind of back on topic here. You can totally just be like, I am drawn to this mushroom and I'm going to eat it. I think there's also really something to be spoken for with that. A lot of my experiences have been, I have my little jar of cyanescens. This is my favorite kind. And I don't turn these into capsules. I put some out in my hand and I look through and I take the one that calls to me. And I am like, and I honor the plant, the mushroom, the indigenous cultures that have cultivated this and given us past knowledge on for people to know. I give honor to the spiritual realms and to everything around me, to Mother Nature, and I imbibe. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about consuming. Sometimes on a more spiritual level, it is like sometimes the material, this life form speaks to us. So, don't shush that. I think that intuition can be really magical and has led to some of my most beautiful experiences. People also put psychedelic mushrooms in food, in tea. They make tinctures. There's all kinds of different things that you can do with it. It's really exciting. And I love trying different ways to consume. A little note on people who get an upset stomach. If you use a technique called lemon teching, you actually can break down some of the components in the mushroom that give you a stomach ache. So lemon teching looks like actually grinding up the mushroom a little bit, putting in some lemon juice, and just letting it break down a little bit. It makes it a little bit softer on the stomach. If you're someone who has a sensitive stomach, I would say tea is the best way to go about it. And like I said, measure out your dose, grind that shit up, put some lemon juice in it, make a tea, strain it, and go low, go slow. You can always warm that tea back up. When you're consuming via tea and when you're lemon teching, it's important to know that the onset is a little bit faster because you've already broken down some of that. So your stomach doesn't have to do all the work. You know, it's already enacted a little bit. So it might come on a little bit faster and leave a little bit faster. So next up here, how do you know if you're a good candidate for trying psychedelics? First of all, I want to say that it's not for everybody, and that is totally okay. A question you should be asking yourself is, am I taking medication that could possibly interact with that? And SSRIs, it's really important to note that some types of medications that common medications that a lot of types of people are on, if it's an SSRI, it can actually prevent you from having a psychedelic experience because of the way that of the types the interaction that it's having with your brain and your brain's receptors. So this is important to know. I have met people who have been wanting to try to treat their depression with mushrooms, but they're on other medications, and then they're like, I'm eating these and I'm not having anything happen. So I've heard this a bunch, and I did do some research. If you want to try mushrooms, I highly recommend talking to your psychotherapist or your psychologist or your psychiatrist, or getting advice from somebody. Talk to your doctor about it. This is new, and come with some resources. If you want to reach out to your doctor, this is something you can call on me for. If you want to talk to your doctor and you're feeling worried because you're like, this is not legal where I am, but I want to tell my doctor that I want to start trying this and I want to be open about it, hit me up. Like, I will help you find the resources, or like, you know, because I think in that situation, going into your doctor's office with some credible resources and being like, look, this is a viable treatment that is happening all over the place. I'm going to try this. I wanted to get your advice on weaning off of my medication. And if anything, you're going to be maybe planting a seed for the evolution of psychotherapy if they haven't looked into this. So question, I don't have a coffee grinder. Can I use a cannabis grinder? I would say yes. I mean, what I like about the coffee grinder is I like to actually powderize it. If you're going to make a tea, a coffee or a cannabis grinder is great because it'll just kind of grind it up a little bit. You can also just use your hands, and if it's nice and dry, you can just rip it apart or kind of crumble it up and just break it down a little bit. Okay, so another question that you should ask yourself is, if you're a good candidate for trying psychedelics to heal yourself, is, do you have support? Integration is everything. It's not just about the experience, it's about how you are bringing in what you've learned into your life to be a new version of yourself that is not just reacting from your trauma, that is not just reacting from your illness, that's not just operating out of this desperate place, right? Ideally, we're able to have these experiences, even if we're in a desperate place, but that we're supported so that we can actually sit with this and get the things we need to get out of it. So if you don't have support, seeking support, finding a therapist who will do work with you, finding a friend who's willing to hold space. Maybe it's a family member. Find one person at least that you can be in communication with, that can help with accountability, story sharing, and also just emotional support for you. And also, again, if you're not sure if you're a candidate and you want to dip your toe, just go low, go slow. You can't go wrong with that. I really feel like it's super empowering to just take a little bit and to start to be like, wow, I actually do feel more connected. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. Wow, I realized I'm dealing with a lot of trauma from when I was a childhood, even though I thought I had a great childhood experience. Wow, I'm realizing how much processed food I eat, right? Like, what happens is all the layers start to unfold for us when we go into this space. So go low, go slow. You can do this. Final piece here before we open it up for some story sharing, how to have a good experience in awakening your mind, body, and spirit to wellness. First off, like I said, find a help, find a friend, find accountability here. You can't do this alone. You can, but you're not going to get as far. We are community-based beings, and it is really important to all of us to exist in community. When we're embarking on this wellness journey, we need to be able to have a safe person that we can share what we're experiencing without feeling shamed. I don't know about you, but for me, with having chronic illness and a variety of things from emotional, from PTSD to actually healing from my stroke, I was in a toxic partnership. He would sometimes shame me or gaslight me around my own experience. And over time, I actually started to question what I was even experiencing. I started questioning if maybe I'm just making myself feel bad, right? Anyone who's maybe like had been dealing with illness, especially chronic illness, you start to ask yourself, you're like, am I just insane? Am I just making myself feel horrible all the time? It's a valid question to ask yourself. But if you have a sound support system, they're going to be like, you are doing everything you can. I see you. I hear you. I support you. You are doing the right thing. So make sure you have that positive support. It is not uncommon for people to have gaslighting in their relationships, especially around wellness. Our whole society is toxic. Our whole society is ill. Everyone is dealing with something from mental illness to physical illness at this point in our evolution because we've been consuming garbage for so long. So find that support system. I can't stress this the most because this is how integration happens. This is how you can sit with your experience and you can call someone and you can tell them what's unfolding for you. And they're not going to think you're crazy. They're going to validate you and to congratulate you for taking an empowered approach in your wellness. Next up, how to have a good experience. Track what you're doing. Keep a journal. You are going to forget things that happen and everything changes as we go on this journey. Your memory of what even happened changes. As a mom, I think it's incredibly interesting that like my memory of my birth story has completely changed over time. I had extreme PTSD from an emergency C-section after 24 hours of labor. And, over time that just kind of has really, the story's changed for me. And it was not an enjoyable experience, but I like have a beautiful son and, I'm on the other side of it. So point being, if you're actively trying to heal, tracking what you're experiencing is going to let you start to get a window on your own personal data. A little tip here is track what you're experiencing in a spreadsheet. Maybe rate yourself, give yourself a number of how well you're feeling. Or if you're tracking different experiences, say you're doing a microdose situation, maybe every day giving a 1 to 5, how am I feeling? 1 being not good, 5 being freaking amazing, on top of the world. And if you use a spreadsheet, you can actually organize your data and get some statistics on yourself as to like, wow, since I started taking this in the first 3 months, I gave an average daily rating of a 2. And then, wow, after 6 months, I'm doing an average daily rating of a 3.8. Yeah, Amanda, data's what's up. How can you know what you're experiencing if you aren't somehow keeping track? And I think like taking accountability in that for our wellness will help us make sure we're not gaslighting ourselves into illness. I think being able to see your progress and also knowing that like, healing is not linear. You're not just going to be like, I started doing this and now I'm better. That's not how our life experience is. Our life is all over the place and it's part of our human experience. But if on average we can be feeling pretty good, I think everyone agrees that's the goal. Next up, integration. I've talked a little bit about this. This is where the magic really happens. And what integration means is, so say you decide to do a macrodose. you set up your support system, you have your, set and setting, you have your medicine, your dose, you've gone low, gone slow, you feel confident, you're a little bit nervous, but you're like so ready for it. You have this experience. Not integrating would look like maybe just being like, wow, that was amazing. And then just like the next day waking up and like just being like, yeah, wow, I did that. And now I'm back to my normal life. That's like not integrating anything. Integration looks like the next day writing about it, the next day maybe sharing again with your person, right? With your support system, continuing to check in, continuing to reflect. What happened there? How is this, asking yourself questions? How is this weaving into other themes in my life? What other things are going on with this? Starting using the experience to ask more questions about yourself, about your wellness, about your journey. It's incredible. And integration is something that sometimes can happen fairly quickly. Other times it's something that we just continually do forever. It just depends on the experience. But what matters is that we take what we learned with us, that we actually embody it, and we leave that person who started in pain and doing this thing out of discomfort, out of desperate, wanting relief so bad, that you become this person that's becoming more aware. And that even if you're uncomfortable, you're empowered that you are participating in this and that you can do this. Next up, expand your options to other types of wellness alongside psilocybin. We talked a little bit about food and consumption, all of that, movement. Bring in art, talk therapy, community, body trauma, a healing like massage, Reiki, gua sha. There's all kinds of body stuff. Y'all, trauma and illness from trauma from illness gets literally stuck in our physical cells. If you are not moving and moving your body and really getting in there and asking for help, things are going to be sticky. And I'm just in the beginning journey of like learning more about how trauma stays in our bodies. It's really intense. So make sure you're doing these other types of wellness to make sure that energy is moving through you. If you've got some trauma stuck right here in this physical place, you might just have issues here over and over and over until you actually do some physical manifestation of energy moving. So in conclusion, I feel 100% sure that we heal ourselves every single day in combination with plant medicine. Humans, mammals, specifically, we coexist. We have co-evolved with these entheogenic plants that bring wellness on a mind, body, and spirit level. This is just my belief, but I have gone through a remarkable transformation. I will forever be an advocate, and mindful consumption of these really powerful indigenous plants is actively shifting the world we're living in right now. You can do this. You can heal yourself with the help of others and plants. Reach out to those around you. Here at Tokeativity, we're going to continue having this conversation every single month at our socials, on our digital platform, in the social network communities, and in the friendships and relationships that we form here. Let's keep the conversation going. We have, this is really, really the beginning of this journey. And especially for those of us who are femme identifying, it's important that we actively heal this generational trauma, that we have the opportunity to like move through together and individually. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. The chat box was on fire. I have been enjoying all of the comments here, and I just wanted to make sure I covered. I wish I had a PowerPoint. This would be an amazing PowerPoint. We have just a couple minutes here. If anybody else wants to jump on stage, feel free to go ahead and request. I think we have to head over to the main stage in a couple minutes here, but it's been my pleasure sharing my experience with you. I think through sharing our personal experiences is really how we learn. And yeah, thanks again, everybody, for coming on here. Lisa said we're about to go live on the main stage. I'm so glad this was helpful to you, Tiffany. Thank you so much, everybody. Nikia, thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry we didn't get into the chat session a little bit more. My presentation was a little bit longer than expected, but I hope that this information has been very valuable to y'all. All right, let's just go to the main stage. I'm going to go backstage and we're going to jump on because it's time for some people to win some stuff. And heck yeah, Liz, you should feel connected. We are connected. It's what the mushrooms want. It's what the plants want. It's what we want too. Thank you so much, everybody. Erin, great to see you here. That makes me so happy you're here. Hells yes. Bevan, woohoo. Lauren, thank you. All right, see you all over there.